Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at Arduino microcontrollers. Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at Arduino microcontrollers, and this video is going to focus on the hardware that you may well come across as a beginner to Arduino. This is going to be the first in a video series where we're going to take someone who's a complete beginner and talk you through the hardware, the software, and hopefully make a few projects that you might find interesting. Now, I have three different Arduinos here, and there is a lot more variety than this. I've flashed them up on the screen just now, but you get ones with built-in Wi-Fi. You can get Arduinos that are specifically designed to go onto textile projects, and probably more that I'm missing. These are the three I have, and these are probably the three most common. Now, what's worth pointing out at this point is all of these Arduinos here aren't from Arduino themselves. Arduino is open source hardware, which means third-party companies can reproduce and sell Arduino style boards, and that's what these are. These are reproductions. Now, if you can get a hold of the originals and you can afford to pay that a little bit more of a premium to get those, then I would recommend doing that. Not only are you supporting an open source company, but you're also guaranteed to get a bit of hardware that's going to perform as it should. I have had original Arduino hardware in the past, but just now these are the ones that I have. So we'll just take a quick look. This one here is an Arduino Nano. This is probably one of the smallest Arduinos that you can get your hands on, and you can see this one has pins on it here, so you can sit it directly into your breadboard. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to show you one in a bit. And it has various inputs and outputs, a USB port, and a reset button. So that's that one. I'll just pop that there. This one here is an Arduino Uno. Now, this is probably the most popular, and if you're just starting off, this is the one I would recommend. It's a bit bigger, so it's easier to use, and it's got a few more options. Just like the other Arduino I've already showed you there, it has a variety of pins. We'll go through these in a bit more detail in a minute or two. But again, USB for communicating with the computer, reset button, power jack, and so on. But we'll have a closer look at this one in a minute or two. And the third type I have is an Arduino Mega. This one has more inputs and outputs than the Uno. So if your project involves lots of devices, then this is the one that you'll likely want to go for. I just want to give an honourable mention to a few other boards and devices that you might come across. So this, for example, this we've talked about in some of our previous videos, some of our Home Assistant videos, and this is the chip is an ESP8266. This is the little Wi-Fi chip here, and these can be programmed through the Arduino software as well. So you might well come across these. If you only need a very small number of input and output, and you want Wi-Fi for your project, then this could be the way to go. This is a D1 Mini is in this form factor, and here's the same chip again, but this is a Node MCU board. So same chip with the Wi-Fi, but you have a few more options on here, a few more inputs and outputs. I'm not going to cover these in this series of videos, but I thought they were worth an honourable mention. To go along with your Arduino, and again I would recommend getting a hold of an Arduino Uno if this is you just starting off and following this series along. But you might well come across some other bits and bobs while you're out shopping. So things that can go on top of the Arduino, these are called shields. So this one, for example here, this is an Ethernet shield. So how these work is these just sit directly on top of the Arduino, and of course I'm struggling to get this one in. Anyway, it sits directly on top of the Arduino. Still gives you access to the input and output pins, but adds some extra functionality. So this one, of course, offers an Ethernet port and also an SD card reader there as well. So you can get all sorts of different hats. You can get ones with relays. You can get ones that offer Wi-Fi. All sorts of stuff. But you'll come across these as well. We probably won't use any of those in this video series, but just be aware that you will come across them. There's a few other bits and bobs that you might want to get a hold of if you're going to start tinkering with Arduino. So the first thing you're probably going to get a hold of is a breadboard. So this is used for prototyping electronics, and there's a few other bits that go with them. This is just a way of making very quick connections between components and your microcontroller. As you can see, I've had some fun with this one and started to melt it at some point. I can't quite remember what that was. But yeah, these are really cheap and just a vital piece of equipment if you're going to start tinkering with this sort of thing. Other things you want to go along with that, these are jumper cables. So there's various different lengths, and these are basically used to make those connections on your breadboard. They have the right size sort of little pin on them to slot into the holes on the breadboard. So a handful of those. Other things that you might want to get hold of, depending on what your project is, are some of these little barrel connectors. So you'll have seen these, on electronics that you have when you have a power adapter, and this is the right size to plug into your Arduino. So if you're wanting to run your Arduino once it's all programmed away from your computer, you can use this on a 9-volt battery or something like that and have your sketch running away. So some of those might well be helpful. Some other things here then, so some buttons or switches. I used to have quite a pile of. You can get buttons that you can plug directly into the breadboard, and I can't find them, unfortunately. I've definitely got some somewhere. So here I've just got a little momentary switch, just as an example. Potentiometers. So this one is this one's a 47k resistor. Not resistor, sorry, potentiometer. The kits that you'll see that you get on Amazon, which some are pretty good, will normally come with a 10k potentiometer, and they're maybe a bit more. When you look at examples, they're probably the ones that are being used in there. But some sort of potentiometer. A servo. So lots of great examples of Arduino projects that use servos. So a couple of these, you can pick these up for very cheap as well. They are a great learning tool when it comes to learning about PWM signal and how that can, you can use PWM to change the position of the servo. So you might want to pick one of those up. Or another example of that might be something like this. This is a stepper motor. There is differences between a stepper motor and a servo, but we'll not go into that just now. The other thing that you might well want is just a handful of LEDs. We've got a few different types here. You can see that most of them have 2 legs on them, but these ones have 4. These are RGB LEDs. But yeah, a handful of LEDs. This is a great place to start. Making an LED flash or making an LED turn on when you press a button is a great place to start when you're learning about Arduino, and that's where we're going to start as part of this video series. Another option when it comes to LEDs is something like this. These are RGB LEDs but on a strip. Like this, so depending on what your project is, they might be more suitable. A few other bits and bobs here. So I've actually done a project with one of these before. I did use one of these D1 Mini boards and one of these to make a YouTube subscription counter. This is just a like a little a numerical display, so they can be quite handy for different projects. This is a micro SD card reader. Now there was one on this shield as well, but if you don't want to, if you don't need to use the whole shield, you can get little standalone ones like this. I did use these for a project and I can't quite remember what it was, but I have a handful of those. Other kind of passive components, so some resistors. You can get packs of resistors with many different values in them for dirt cheap off eBay. So these ones here happen to be 860, but you want a good variety of values of resistors. Same with capacitors. So just a variety pack of capacitors comes in handy. And some diodes as well. Not used as commonly as the other two, but do come in handy for some projects. The only other thing here that I've pulled out, and I've pulled this off an old project that's actually already stuck to a bit of corrugated plastic, but a numerical keypad. So this could go together with, for example, the servo here, and you could make some sort of numerical lock for a door or a box or something like that. I think they're quite common beginner projects. So again, these are really easy to find on eBay or Amazon. And of course, you'll need the USB cables as well to go along with them. So this video is going to be part of a series. This is the first one, obviously just concentrating on the hardware. There is some kits, as I said, on Amazon that will give you all of these bits and bobs, and I'll try and link to one that looks decent in the video description. I think this video obviously was just about the hardware that you might need as a beginner. In the next video we'll go on to look at the software, and we'll write our first sketch, or we'll certainly look at the examples that you get in the Arduino IDE software. Just before we wrap this video up, I think it is just worth mentioning the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi and the Arduino do get compared to each other quite a lot, and there's obvious reasons for that. They don't look dissimilar. They're a similar sort of size. They've got some sort of USB port on them, and they're used for hobbyists for projects. But they are very different. The Raspberry Pi, we've played with this in other videos, mainly to do with Home Assistant. But the Raspberry Pi is basically a computer. This has the ability to be a standalone desktop computer. It has a CPU, it has RAM, it has a network controller. It's a whole computer in one package. Whereas the Arduino is just the microcontroller. There's no RAM, there's no network support unless you add additional components. So depending on what your project is, depending on what you're trying to achieve, if you're doing quite a simple project, then the Arduino. If you're doing something slightly more complex, then the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi does have input-output pins here as well, GPIO pins. So you can connect all the peripherals you see here. You can do that with the Pi as well. But you can pick one of these up for about £5, and this is about £35. An example here might be that if you wanted some sort of door lock, so say for example you were going to use this in a solenoid or a servo, and you wanted people to key in a code to get through a door, then you could achieve that with the Arduino. However, if you'd like to do that same project, but you'd like to add a webcam so you can see who's coming in and out of the door, or a webcam that takes a photograph when someone puts the wrong code in, for example, then you would have to use a Raspberry Pi for that. So I hope that makes sense. Quite a lot of information in there again. So in the next video, as I said, we'll go ahead and we'll have a look at the software that makes all of this work together. If you have found this interesting or you'd like to see more of my videos on this subject, please do go ahead and subscribe, leave a like and a comment on the video, and thanks for watching.